Welcome to the Speak Pact podcast, where high-performing speakers and the producers who hire them merge to give you the insider secrets to the lucrative speaking industry. Antoniette Rose, your podcast host and celebrated speaker agent, unveils insider success strategies. Discover a nexus of thought leaders and bookers, maximizing your potential in each and every episode. Your ticket to ultimate speaking success begins right here. Catch the transformative insights waiting for you on the Speak Pact podcast, hosted by the industry powerhouse herself, Antoniette Rose.
Welcome back to Speak Pact. Thrilled you're here with us today. We're going to dive into some unique areas, some topics that we don't always dive into on this show. I have the fabulous Dr. Celeste Stein with me today, and she brings a lot to the table when it comes to the speaking industry. Not only is she a powerful speaker herself, but she has a unique journey in that. Couple of things. One of which is she lost 80 pounds. And I know all of us who get in front of a camera want to look and feel our best. And she did it a lot of it with the power of mindset. So I'd really love to dive into that. You are also someone who helps get other speakers on stages. So definitely want to dive into that. But as a little bit of an introduction, Dr. Stein is a communications expert. She is part of a pretty amazing organization or initiative. I don't know what you want to call it, but that's Play Like a Girl. And it's grooming young girls who are interested in the STEM sciences, right? Science, technology, engineering, math. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
So much to you. You've been in media, you've been a reporter, you've been a weather woman. You still conduct pretty widespread interviews internationally, right? And televised. So you've just really been out there. But one through line is that it's all been through the power of your voice for the most part. So welcome to the stage, Dr. Celeste.
Thank you so much. This is a pleasure to be here today, and I look forward to a robust discussion, if you will, on so many awesome topics that I definitely consider to be in my wheelhouse, and enjoy, sharing with others because. I think it's so important that if we've learned something, that we share that with other people, because you never know what little thing you may have to offer that may really help someone else. And that's kind of what I'm about. I like to see other people succeed and thrive and be their best selves.
Yes. Okay. All the things. Love it. So tell me a little bit about way back when you decided, hey, I have a good voice. I mean, there's some power in getting my voice out there. I want to dip my toe in media, communications, PR, probably even. I want to get on stages. Like, what was your thought process in the very beginning?
Well, I kind of have to go back to high school. Two things happened to me that really prompted me to move into that area because my father really wanted me to be a dentist. And you know how parents kind of encourage you to maybe follow in their footsteps or that type of thing. So he was a
Yeah.
dentist, and I used to work with him a lot of times in the summers from a young child. So learn the whole bit about dentistry. But you know how sometimes there's something you do in your life that you just tend to excel at. And speaking ended up being one of those things. So the first thing that happened, I had a French teacher by the name of Miss Rosemary Finberg, who,
Rosemary Finberg.
yes, who was at
Pretty
my,
fabulous when you can remember a high school teacher. They
I can't forget
left a
her.
mark.
She was a wonderful woman, but she taught French. And I took her all 4 years for French. bonjour.
Oui, oui.
Basically, she decided to launch the first forensics league at my high school. And so I joined. We had a small team of about, I don't know, 8 or 9 girls. It was all girls Catholic high school. And we decided to work within the state championships and things like that, and ended up going all the way to number one in the state of Maryland.
Wow.
And so I won many awards. That was like the first year out to win the state championship was like a miracle. And so I still, if y'all go back to my high school yearbook, you'll know I'm not lying because there's a picture in there. No, but
I'm gonna go look.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, that happened, and so did a lot of plays and realized I had this gift of actually I would be able to kind of like memorize a book and spat it back, maybe in different voices and
Wow. That is a
languages and
talent.
things like that. I don't know. It's just, it's so weird. My son can do the same thing. He'll
Wow.
watch a show and then he'll like redo the show back, and every person like with a different accent. It's just amazing. But I definitely consider that to be a gift. But that's how I kind of started with speaking. And then at the age of 17, I went away to college. And when I came back, I'm one of those October babies. So
Mhm.
when I came back home to DC, I was freshman, coming out of my freshman year, but I was like, I would like to see if I can get an internship. So I went up to Howard University in Washington, DC. Crazy me. Went in, I actually got
It's
to
good when
speak
we don't know that this is
what
like
we
a
don't
long shot, right? It's really good sometimes.
right. So I go in and I meet the news director, and we sat there and we talked, and he was very nice and cordial, and then he looked at me and he said, "Sorry, all our internships are taken."
Oh,
And I looked at him and I said, "Well," I said, "What if I just volunteered? Could I volunteer?" And he said, "You actually do this for free." I said, "Yes, I want to learn." He was like, "Okay, you're hired." you know,
wow.
basically. But then 2 weeks after I started, there was a guy, working in the newsroom with me. His name was Bill, and Bill said, "You know what? You're the hardest working person in here. I'm going up. I'm going to go talk to Kathy Hughes, who was the GM. And he's like, I'm going to see if we can get you hired." And so he went up and came back down and said, "You're hired." They actually
Oh
started
my
paying me
goodness.
2 weeks in, and I mean, to tell you how green I was, they were asking me, like, there was a woman from Europe, from Great Britain, who was the editor, and she kept going, "I need you to do a voice up." I had no, I'm 17. I had no idea what she was talking
It's
about.
a voice
And
note.
so a friend of mine who actually became news director at a very big station in Atlanta, a dear friend, she came, she goes, "Come here." I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "How come you didn't do that voicer she asked you to do?" And I said, "What's a voicer?" I'm sorry. I'm being honest, but I had no idea. And she's like, "She wants you to go on the air." I was like, I thought these people would never put me on the air at 17. I'm not even legal.
Right.
I can't drink or
Yes.
anything. So I ended up, doing my first broadcast that day and learned everything there
Wow.
was to know. And at the end of the summer, they tried to get me to come there and work, full time and pay for my education. But then they were like, I was like, I said no because I love going to school at Spelman College in Atlanta. I mean, it was the best place. I'd made all my friends. And so I was determined to get back to Spelman. Plus, I like being away, from home.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so I get back down there and they were like, "You're in Atlanta where the Atlanta child murders are taking place. You think you could cover that for us?" I was like, "Could I? Oh my God, So I actually arranged all my classes either in the morning or afternoon, and I was a stringer for them. And I did every day, I covered the trial, and I would do about 5 stories a day, either in the morning or the afternoon. And I mean, that was like the biggest trial of the century. If people don't know, Wayne Williams was black convicted serial killer on 2 counts, Nathaniel Cater and Jimmy Ray Payne. He ended up being, initially, though, they were looking at him for 32 murders in the Atlanta area
Wow.
of Black children.
Oh,
And it implemented a curfew. It was the biggest story ever at that
wow.
time. And so I
Was
ended up
that in
getting,
the 80s?
yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was 81.
Wow.
So
So at
I
17 years old, you are
18 by then,
covering, so
18
by
by
that
then.
time, 18, but you're
Yeah,
covering a story of that magnitude. Like there was a calling there, like there was something divine was happening for sure, but you had to step
absolutely.
into it. So
Yes.
as you're getting your voice out there, basically untrained, like you're learning as you go
Hmm.
while you're studying, I'm assuming communications in college
And economics,
and
double major.
economics. Good. How did you find your voice? How did you grow that confidence? Some of it, yes, is going to be natural, but some
Mhm.
of it is going to be your diligence and doing it scared and doing it imperfect. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to learn how to do, the recordings for the broadcast. They say people have that news voice, that kind of thing. Well, I would feed my stories over the phone. You have a little device that would hook to the back of the phone, and a recorder, and you could basically record your voice that way. And so
Wow.
I would either do that. We at back then we had cart machines. You had to learn how to use those. You erase the cart machines. But the ironic thing is, my friend Marjorie, who I was talking about earlier, she ended up becoming the news director at V103. So I was also doing some stuff for Clark College's radio station, which is where I took all my communications classes. I ended up, I was working there already, but she was like, "Girl, I need you to help me. Come over here." And so I ended up going over to V103 and doing, helping her put together stories. And as I was covering the trial, she used some of my broadcasts that I was doing for HUR for V103. And I mean, it's just crazy, how you meet people and they become an integral part of your life. But my whole thing was just learning the craft, working hard, and studying. But even having all that experience, by the time I graduated, I was anchoring a 1 hour nightly newscast in Atlanta for a show called The Lawmakers. And somebody else that was in that internship before me was Deborah Norville, who does Entertainment Tonight.
Yep. Yep.
um, so all the people there, I got accepted to go to grad school in Chicago at Northwestern, which is one of the top journalism schools in the country. So I applied there, and Columbia. I got into both, but I chose Northwestern because they actually assign you a TV and radio station and let you do hands on. So I ended up going to Chicago and being assigned a station in um, one station in Fargo, North Dakota, and the other in Minnesota. And so as I worked through that and ended up spending my last quarter at Northwestern being assigned to those stations. So I worked on Capitol Hill, covering Congress as well, um, for those two TV stations and radio station, again in Fargo, North Dakota, and Minnesota. And,
Fabulous.
interviewed all kinds of people up in Congress, from Rudy Perpich, Bob Dole,
I mean, you
Elizabeth
just kind of
Dole.
jumped right into the deep end,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
What would the Dr. Celeste of today like to go back and tell the young 18, 19, 20-year old Celeste that would have, I mean, everything builds on what you become, right? So no regrets. But what is that piece of advice that you would have given yourself back then?
I think maybe not to be afraid to jump right in. I felt like I needed all
It
this
doesn't sound
education.
like you were, but okay.
Well, when I say that, like, by the time I graduated, I was sitting in the galley down at the legislature in Georgia, and a man came and sat next to me from 11 Alive station in Atlanta. He was one of the producers, and he basically offered me a weekend anchor role, which is the same thing that happened to Deborah Norville. And so I had to make the decision as to whether I wanted to stay in Atlanta and start anchoring a weekend show in a top 10 market, or go to Northwestern and really learn journalism.
Mm,
So it was a very tough decision. And so I
yeah.
actually, one of the producers for the TV show I was working for in Atlanta, he says to me, here's Debbie's number. I think you should call her and ask her what she thinks, since she's been through it. So I
Wow.
called her, and I asked her, what would she do if she had to do it all over again? She said, I think I would have gone to Northwestern. I said, why? And she said, well, because I always felt like I wasn't, you know, kind of that imposter syndrome, because you maybe didn't have the educational background or training.
Sure.
So I decided to do it the hard way, and kind of work it from the ground up. So,
Good job. Love it.
but it takes longer. It's a lot harder, but it makes you stronger at the end of the day, I think. You
Well,
know.
and look at the result. I think that there are a lot of amazing voices out there, but they know that they're amazing, right? They know they've had a lot of success in their professional life and they have expertise and they can deliver a great message, but they don't always factor in that hard elbow grease that goes into even some of the biggest names out there. And it never stops
Hmm.
because the mood is always changing, competition is always changing, opportunities are always changing. You always have to have that machine running for you to get those consistent high value engagements, right? And I
Hmm.
really, first of all, applaud your decision
Hmm.
to make sure that your foundation was solid, but that also you were willing to work for free, right? Otherwise you would have never gotten those opportunities that
Right.
you got. And let's
Yeah.
translate that to sometimes we talk for quote unquote free. However, if you do it right, no engagement is a free engagement, right? There's
Right.
always a way to monetize it. But
Absolutely. Hmm.
and there's different kinds of currency, and sometimes currency comes in with a face of opportunity. You understood that at a really young age and you were willing to put in that work versus I'm just going to join some bureaus and I'll get some phone calls and I could just be me, right? Well, yes. And you really have to be working right alongside those bureaus, agencies, um, if you want to be consistently getting those 3 to 5 high value engagements every single month. So I
Right.
know that you do some bureau work as well. Tell me how what you do
Hmm.
differs from traditional bureaus. How do you market your speakers? What is your
Oh.
ecosystem?
Well, I'll tell you, our company, Bishop Stein Associates, I founded the company roughly 25 years ago, doing mainly public relations. It grew to marketing and advertising because, um, much like Walmart, we started to consider ourselves a one-stop shop because we'd start working for a client, work for some extremely large clients, a lot of Fortune 500 companies, but we would start off working on maybe some news releases, sometimes crisis communications work, just depending. And then they would be like, well, you did such a good job on that. Do you think you can develop us some ads in English and Kurdish and Spanish, or, and uh, find placements? And, we have a budget of this. And can you do that? And I'm like, sure, we can do that. And so one thing kind of led to another. And, it grew, but I had to learn, limitations too, because if you're not this huge company, you're going to find that, when everybody else is at home sleeping, that you're you're up past midnight,
Yep.
usually getting the work done. And so I've had to learn some work life balance, hard lessons in work life balance, because I do enjoy my work and what I do, but you also have to learn to balance that and take life. easy sometimes,
Yep.
find those things that you enjoy doing, if you will, whether it's bubble baths, that's my thing, or, just watching your favorite show or going to movies, whatever it is you like to do, make sure you take some time to play a little bit, if you work hard. But, just, getting, to some of the stuff that, I ended up doing with the Speakers Bureau that came about in 2019. In
No, that was a good year to start a
Yeah,
speakers bureau.
well, yeah, ha ha, right, but right as we got into everything, the bottom fell out, right, and
Yeah.
so that wasn't such a bad thing though, because it gave me a significant amount of time just after finishing my PhD in strategic communication. It gave me some time to actually research and develop the infrastructure that needed to be there for the Speakers Bureau. So you asked
Mhm.
me a minute ago, how do we differ from other speakers bureaus? And one of the things, we like to provide diverse voices. And sometimes when you use that word diverse or diversity, people think you maybe mean just African American, but obviously I mentioned to you earlier, I come from a very diverse background. And so I think of that in many ways. So we have people from all over the world on our Speakers Bureau. I mean, that do a variety of things, but who are just amazing people with expertise and, just, I can think of one young lady. She's one of the leading cybersecurity attorneys in the country, graduated from law school at 19, just a genius, and just an amazing individual that, I'm working with regularly. I represent Matthew Knowles, the father of Beyonce Knowles, people like him, which we talk regularly. And I will say he was such an inspiration and such a good person to be working with. Just a very strong individual to be working with during the pandemic. We had some really
Oh,
heart to heart conversations at a time that was really difficult for obviously a lot
everyone.
of us.
Yeah.
And so, hats off to him for, being so encouraging, and just learning about people, and
Yeah.
having a genuine care for others and wanting them to be able to tell their stories. We do some work with Kevin Dyson, who's working on a book right now, which we also have a publishing division. So, they're working on a new book for him, for his infamous Music City Miracle play, which is the 25th anniversary coming up next year. And
Mhm.
so we're doing a number of things with that. But, people like him, he's an introverted leader. And, that's some of the stuff he's going to be talking about in his book. And I just think, just to talk to people like that every day and just to hear their stories and
Isn't
how
it
they were able
fabulous?
to
Love it. Yeah.
persevere and just amazing, and so I love being able to represent people like that and to just share things with them. I feel sometimes I feel like I'm a life coach too, because they have things that they're going through just like anybody else, and we talk those things through. And anybody I think who's ever gotten a PhD will tell you it's not an easy task. You have to learn how to do a lot of things and multitask. And I certainly like relate with him on being introverted, because by nature, you would never know it today, but I was the quietest child that you would ever meet. She's the
Yeah.
night in the yearbook. She's the nicest, quietest. Like
Yeah.
I hardly said two words, but put a microphone and a camera in front of me, and who knew? I
All of a
would come
sudden, yeah,
alive.
it's like the person who stutters, but you put them on a microphone, they don't stutter anymore. I'm with
Right.
you. I am one of those introverted leaders.
Hmm.
But we can step up when we need to step up, right? Introverted,
Yeah.
to me, I think is widely misunderstood. I don't think it means
Yes.
wallflower or terrified.
Hmm.
I think that's a different thing.
Sure.
I mean, this isn't scientific. This is just my opinion, but I think it
Hmm.
means more. It has more to do with how we refuel.
Hmm.
So my husband, who is a definite extrovert, refuels around people. I refuel alone. Like I need to retreat, get with the trees. That's how I refuel. I
I
think of
agree.
that.
I'm with you on that. Go for a walk, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Some
tell
people
me a little
never
bit.
calm down though, do they? They just, and they
Yeah.
need that. They can really learn. This is a really good point. I think they can really learn from the introverts because I find that often it's the squeaky wheel type of individual that gets a lot of the attention and the ear of influential people sometimes.
Yeah.
But from being a teacher, I've noticed like on paper as I read the stuff from the students that sometimes are a little more quiet and introverted and don't always speak up, I'm like, this is what should be being said right here. Like, you just wish there was more even give and take when it comes to hearing from those that you might not ordinarily hear from. And so that's part of what we're doing with the Speakers Bureau, and asking about, what do we hope to do that's a little bit different, hearing stories that we haven't heard before,
Mm,
and that's going to be so important, especially as we go into this age of AI, where everything's sort of being normalized, neutralized, and
roboticized.
data and
Yeah.
information is being pulled. That's the one thing the robot can't do is tell our human stories. So
Right.
take that as a
Not
tip.
with authenticity and just that heart that we have. So
Yes.
how does one, as if one of our speakers, one of our listeners in the audience who are speakers, right? Um, or more say, you know what, I am attracted to Dr. Stein's format.
Platform.
How do they apply to be part of your bureau? What are some of the requisites, right? What are some of the things that you require?
Requirements. Yeah, very good question. Thank you for asking. I'll say that sometimes people approach us and they're not quite ready to be speakers. So they need to keep this in mind. If you've never spoken before, you've never really been on stage, or you maybe have been in the classroom teaching in front of students, but you haven't necessarily been in front of an
Hmm.
audience. Um, I think you want to have commanded a room full of people before you say you're going to be a speaker, because we require at this point that person has news articles about them, they have videos, whether they do their own podcasts or they have videos of them speaking, they have a high usually social media following, they have a pre-written bio. And so they're pretty much already out there. We just kind of help them facilitate and make sure that they are being properly compensated for their speaking engagements. Now, I've thought about maybe growing something to teach people public speaking. I have taught public speaking classes since about 2003 at several universities in the greater Nashville area. And, there's a real art to speaking. And so I'd like I put out tips on LinkedIn and stuff like that sometimes, to tell people things about, know your audience, or, just tips that you need to be an effective speaker. But it all starts with a phone call. They're free to like sign up online. You can contact me through www.bsa, that's B as in boy, S as in Sam, A as in Apple, PRInc.com. So Bishop PR inc.com. And
Okay.
you go on there, and there's a tab that says Speakers Bureau. Go to that, and you'll find some information there. And people usually send in a request, and I call you back, and we'll have a conversation. We'll see where you are, and if you're not where you need to be, we talk about how you can get there to be part of what we're doing. And
Okay. This is fabulous. I'm so glad you said these things because I read, and you can send them back to me because that's what we do. We get the foundational pieces put together
oh,
for
nice,
these speakers. Yeah, we'll need to talk. We'll need to
yes,
talk. Um,
yeah.
but often they're like, "No, I just want to speak. You're going to put me on the news? Like, I'm not going to get paid for the news." Or, they don't understand the weight and value of those magazine articles, the news articles, the media. Um,
Mhm.
the videos, right? You mentioned having a strong bio. With a strong bio comes from experiences. That's how you strengthen your bio. Having a strong
Absolutely.
following by getting your voice out there on social media. All of those things might not seem related, but they are what makes or breaks you.
Hmm.
As are you going to get chosen, or is the next guy going to get chosen for that particular speaking engagement or for a bureau or an agency? So I'm so glad you brought those things up because they are an essential part of
Hmm.
the process. And you were perfectly positioned to
Hmm.
understand that, having had been in media for so long, I
Right.
should say, present tense, and with
Hmm.
your strategic communications background and your journey, you understood that. And so you probably got out there and got your voice out there in those kinds of ways and just kind of stepped into it all. But I don't think that the average speaker sees the holistic picture.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's another thing that really helps. We're able to get our speakers out there. We do different things like a speaker spotlight where we highlight that speaker. We have a newsletter that
Right.
goes out to all of our corporate clients, and that highlights does we do articles on some of our featured speakers, and just we do things to kind of get them out there, and then we do some direct mails, one sheets and things like that that kind of explain who the person is, and we target different entities that we have contracts with, and then we match the right speaker to the particular event. So we're doing a lot of different things, and it's really been a joy. And that's how I think in life you kind of wonder, am I moving in the right direction sometimes? And when I love it, as they say, I love it when a plan comes together because everything kind of works together. And a lot of my speakers come on my live radio show, and they just have such amazing stories, just amazing people. Again, I'm loving it. I'm just loving them and all the things that they're doing. And I just, feel very fortunate and blessed to be in the midst of some of these greats. I tell you.
Amen. Okay. Does your bureau require an upfront? Do you have like an upfront fee, or is it commission based only? How do you guys
Yeah.
operate in that way, and why?
So,
Yeah.
yeah, well, we do have an upfront fee. We charge 14.50 at the moment. We used to, when we first started, we were doing everything pro bono.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, that does not keep the lights on. And when you start hiring people, they do want a paycheck
Mm.
every 2 weeks,
Yep.
usually, or every week. So we ended up, having to charge. This is mainly administrative, to cover the cost of the website and the development of the marketing pieces, as we market them very heavily to develop the newsletter. And then we're actually going to be adding some trainings coming up shortly. And we also we can pivot because of the strong background in public relations, marketing, and advertising. We can actually help them when they want to do special events. So we've done a couple of, and some of the people that want them to speak. So we kind of work in collaboration with them to help them in putting on those events and proper promotion of our speakers. And again, very diverse voices that can certainly talk on a myriad of topics.
So
So
that's to
it's
kind of get
really
them
good.
index cataloged, ready, right? And then
Yes.
once they get an engagement, what's the process from there?
So we do a lot of background work because a lot of people are wondering, okay, what is it that you're actually doing? People have no idea how much background work really has
Work
to go
that
on to
goes in.
put on
Yes.
a stellar performance, because we don't do mediocre. We're trying to
Amen.
like make people remember our people. So we are setting up meetings with the speaker, or getting background bullets. What is it they want them to specifically cover? Who is in the audience? Again, I said earlier, you got to know your audience.
Yeah.
Who is it that you are reaching? What's the age demographic? Ethnicity. You know, where is their field of study? I just did one with
Yeah.
some nurses at a university about 3 weeks ago, and so it was good to know because the speaker could then relate some of the things. Turned out his mother was a nurse. He wasn't a nurse, but his mother was, so he could relate to the audience in that way. So it was so cool,
Yeah.
just to find out these little things. But we also, everything from the room setup. What is the room like? Is it long? Is it, are we gonna need a jumbotron?
Right.
Can people in the back hear? We do walkthroughs, checking to see if all that is the way it needs to be. Do you need a handheld mic? Do you need a wireless, a lavalier? Do you need an
They're
earpiece? I mean, how do
writers.
you work?
Yeah.
You talk with your hands, like we're covering all of that. We handle all the payment information. We treat our all of our people as contractors, so they get 1099s. So we do all that paperwork, filings with the IRS, and take care of that stuff as well, which is a headache that I'm sure a lot of them are so glad that we're handling. So
Yeah.
just making sure that we're doing all those
So the
things.
check, I'm
And
assuming, comes to the agency, and then you take a percentage, I'm assuming,
yes,
and then you cut them a check as a 1099
yeah,
subcontractor kind of person. Mhm.
yes, exactly.
What is the percentage that you guys take, or is it different between your different?
It depends on who it is. The percentage may be different.
Does it range from like 20?
Most the range now is anywhere from 15 to 30%.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
that's what I'm familiar
Standard.
with as well. The reason why I'm
Hmm.
asking these questions, because there's a lot of speakers out there who want to be on bureaus, right? Do you recommend, number one, this kind of a, I know the answer. do you do you
Good.
recommend doing some background, not just haphazardly applying for bureaus, but doing some background research to make sure you are a good fit for that bureau, number one. And number
Yes.
two, what are your thoughts on being on more than one bureau, or with more than, like,
Okay.
being with agents and bureaus, that kind of thing? Give me your thoughts
Right.
on that.
Well, as far as the bureaus go, I'm just going to give you some of the feedback I hear from some of our clients. The reason why I think they like working with us is because we talk to them about their specific needs and the trajectory in which they're trying to go. And so by that, um, often people who are in the public eye or the public spotlight don't get the opportunity to work with someone who has 40 years of experience working in media and public relations and marketing and advertising. So I'm able to give a lot of very solid advice that I think saves people a lot of money in the long run.
Yeah.
The other thing, a lot of people are, I find, giving their services, their goods away for free, and we help them so that that doesn't happen, where we are actually getting them paid for what they're doing and making sure they're getting a fair market rate for what they're doing. And unfortunately, I think African Americans especially get taken advantage of a lot in that area. They just think they're supposed to speak for free, and they don't realize there are people making $60,000 to do one speech.
Mhm.
So if you're like Oprah Winfrey, you have the gift of gab. You might want to consider working with a speakers bureau. Especially, another thing I like to tell the speakers when we speak with them is that um, my goal is so that my clients do not have to worry about anything but speaking. We handle everything else. We handle the rest because if I've done a lot of public speaking myself. I've done very big events. I've done rooms that had, thousands of people where I couldn't even see the back of the room. I've done a lot of public speaking. And so when you have too much to worry about, you're not going to be as effective, in my opinion,
Mhm.
as a speaker. And it was always so nice. I've worked with people over the years that, I mean, help with the run of show and really knew what they were doing and help with the events. And, it's just, it puts me at such great ease to have people that I've worked with that I know if they're doing it, I feel perfectly comfortable. Whereas, there's sometimes I've worked with other people and it's just been helter skelter, and I'm having to kind of do more work of what I know needs to be done. I remember covering a huge event for a huge organization, but the person putting it on was not organized, and they had a speaker who ended up not showing up. So they knew I spoke and they just pulled me into it. And I was like,
Nice.
oh my God,
Right place
you
at the
know.
right time. That's fabulous. So
But
how
it was not fabulous. It was like I was so nervous. It was horrible because, I don't ever want somebody else to go through that is what I'm saying.
oh,
I want to make sure that we cover all that. If you're doing something with Bishop Stein and Associates Speakers
that's
Bureau,
not going to
you're going to
happen.
know that all that stuff's taken care of. You're going to get your check.
Yeah.
Everything's going to work, right? So that's how
Yeah.
we like.
Yeah, I guess it's a two sides of that. So it's go do your homework, make sure everything's set up, especially if it's an international talk, but even if it's right
Yes.
there in your own region.
Right. And that's
But
another thing, we handle, we're working with like last week I was working on plane reservations with a booking agency, and handling their travel, making sure all the food expenses are taken care of. Those are other things that we're doing that is an added benefit, but we
yeah,
do all that, like I'm coordinating a lot of that. And that's a lot of what it is, like
for
almost
sure.
like event planning, but
Well, and I
I've been
think
that. Yeah.
being at the ready as a speaker, let's say you're working on an engagement for someone and something happens, they come down with a cold or there just something happens. Um, the other speakers within your bureau, if you're able to go to them, hey, I know this is next week. Can you get it together and be out there? You're probably going to be more apt to call on that particular speaker if you know you can count on them, right? They're already ready.
Right.
It's not a lot of homing and hawing and divaing, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
but that you can really get them into that engagement with a
Mhm.
lot, without a lot of heartache and a lot of trouble. So tell me a little bit about that. How many speakers do you work with at any given time on average?
Usually roughly about 50. And we
Wow.
have been giving a lot of consideration as to whether we do we really want to expand that.
I was going to
you
say
know,
that's a whole lot of work to be doing for 50 different people. Yeah.
absolutely. And the thing about me, I like every one of my clients to feel like they are my only client.
Mhm.
But the truth is, no.
Well, let's talk
you
about
know,
that. Let's talk about that. So you have 50 people. I know you have a team of at least five, I think you said. So it's a solid team. How many times on average can you pitch one one speaker in a given month with 50 speakers?
so what we don't do it that way. We we basically have themes. Some of our speakers speak on the same topics in some cases, whether it be safety and security, cybersecurity. It may be, um, let's see, might be AI, different topics, and so we may group them, or it may be something women in marketing, things like that, that I might be a part of moderating a panel or something like that. So they may be pitched as a team. And then another thing, we're going to start putting on some of our own events. We haven't, we're it's in phases. Like, you can't do everything all at once, right? But I am working on a plan to basically add, where we're going to do some of our own events, perhaps in the areas of leadership conferences, and trade shows and things like that. If we can do trade shows, leadership conferences, things like that, that will be of benefit to a great number of people. And so, it'll be some
Yes, coming
investment.
from the producer side,
Yeah.
I'm all about creating your own stages as well, right? Do it
Yes.
all.
Yes.
So let's say, okay, so you've pitched, let's say, four or five of your speakers for a particular engagement, if I'm understanding that
Multiple.
process right.
We may be pitching multiple speakers at one time to different
Yes.
entities for different things. But we do mass emails as well.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So once, let's say, one of those speakers gets the engagement and they go and they do a great job, and that engagement might turn into other engagements. Like, who owns the relationship at this point? And the reason why I'm asking you these questions is because I think that a lot of speakers come in very unprepared with regards to how bureaus and agencies and these kinds of organizations work. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've had at least three people who have dropped their other speakers bureaus once they started working with me. And they basically were like, the reason why it's like, I can't even, I don't even feel like there's anybody I can call or talk to. Or I signed with this agency about a year ago. I've never heard from them since. I see my picture and three lines under my name. We build a 5-page website out for every single client,
Yeah,
you know,
nice.
and, that's a lot of effort.
It is. Are you
It's trust
exclusive,
me.
or they can be with more than one?
We only have maybe two or three. We're probably going to move in the direction of exclusivity.
Okay.
And the reason why I worked so hard um, to do an excellent job with every person and everything we touch and do, that if we have other people in the mix of that, it's just it's, to me, it's kind of problematic. I
Mm,
mean, it become because who's actually doing the work, who's actually, you know what I'm saying. I don't
yeah.
know. I mean, I'm not closed minded, and I'm certainly not saying I would be opposed to listening to a new idea. Certainly if somebody has a better way of doing something, or uh yeah, something that may work a lot smoother, that's a little more turnkey and so forth. I mean, nobody can do this type of high level work in terms of excellence forever.
Right.
So I have to be,
Well,
as a smart business person, I have to be thinking of the future. I have to be
yeah.
thinking of partnership, collaboration, working with
Yeah.
other people. And so I do think like that. But as far as getting something to the point where it works, you know, it's very hard. If you know how something should be or work, sometimes you have to get in, lay the foundation, and then add those other layers on later. you know
Amen. Yeah.
but you know what I'm saying, to get it
Yeah.
off the ground. Otherwise it will, I mean, 90% of all small businesses fail. What does that mean? Only 10% succeed. And as one standing here after 25 years, I can say I think I know a little something.
Yes, for
i've learned
sure.
i've learned a little something.
So for that speaker who maybe wants 3 engagements a month, or so, are you booking like 50 engagements a month?
No, so
Um,
listen, the thing is, like, the client sets the rule there. I mean, I have people who are in law school. I've got people who are traveling the world doing all kinds of things.
yeah.
So they don't sometimes have time to speak 50 times a month or whatever it's going to be. So
No,
we
not
will
you. Like 50
each
times
one.
would be for your 50 people, not for one
Oh yeah,
person. Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
goodness.
But yeah, no, I mean, certainly not. But there are, it just depends. Sometimes we're a little busier than others. Sometimes you may have a couple in the same week. It's just, that's a little crazy, or especially if they're in different states, and but a lot of the groundwork has already been laid. So I
Yeah.
mean, it may take usually anywhere. It could be. I mean, I've had events booked a year out, 9 months out,
Yes. Yep.
six
I hear
months
you.
out. So a lot of that groundwork, it's kind of on a calendar, and we're getting into it as we get closer to it. But making sure that the bookings for travel and stuff are done early enough so that it's not costing the client on that end too much money. Just
Yeah.
being organized, very, very, very organized, and on top of
Yeah.
all
And
of
you're passionate. You're not only organized, but you're passionate, which is beautiful. So as we wrap, how
that.
many engagements per year, realistically, right, can an established, pretty strong name, at least in their niche,
hmm
speaker expect to be able to be booked for in a bureau like yours?
I think uh, realistically, maybe the max would be about 4 a month,
Four
because
per
it's
month.
travel. Most of the time they're usually
Hmm.
going someplace else. The bigger names, So for them, it's especially if I don't know. I'm not going to get into the age thing, but it's like if somebody is traveling, that week is done. So once you go someplace, you leave on a Monday, the engagement's on a Tuesday, you may be traveling back either Wednesday or Thursday. I mean, that's 4 days out of your week. When are you going to speak again? I mean, and get
Yes.
back home and see your family. So, it has to be sort of realistic. So I think most of them, once we get into that detail there, it's like 4 times as good.
Well, how do you, I mean, I can imagine you with a
Mhm.
team of, you're a team of five. That would be, let's say, all 50 of your speakers are at the place where they're rocking and rolling, like they've gone through that 6 month warm up period, whatever it might be. That's 200 engagements you're managing
Mhm.
per month. Like, how do you do that as a bureau? And wow, like that's so worth the 1450 plus 25%.
Yeah. Well, we're not doing that many. We're getting there. We're finding it's better to actually work with particular entities that need speakers
Mm.
and help them on that end.
So that some of that work is shared. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
right.
But a lot of it, you have to look the part. If you're going to be a speaker, then you need to be a speaker. You have to have everything going for you so that when they look at that web page, you're selling a product, you're selling
Yeah.
yourself. So, they're comparing you to other people. What is it that you have up there? And so sometimes some people don't have as many speaking engagements as they need to, and I would say, do more of that. But also become familiar with the Speakers Bureau's other speakers, because when people are looking, they're looking at that person, then they're looking at what you have to
Yeah.
offer. So I'm just saying, you want to be up to par. And I've seen somebody who came from nothing and killed it, man. Like this young lady we work with, she went from 0 to 60, like in 6 months,
Mhm.
and speaks world renowned
Okay.
TED Talk speaker. It's so it can be done,
I know that there are plenty of our listeners who are going to want to know how to reach you. And this is how you reach Dr. Celeste Stein. www. B like boy, S like Stein, A like agency, PRinc.com. Definitely reach out because she's doing some fabulous work. As we close, Dr. Stein, I know that you care about the power of voice like I do. So what is in our collaborative kind of pact to make the greatest impact that we can through the power of our voice, what is one piece of advice, one sort of even tactical challenge you would give to the Speak Pact audience?
Well, I hope this doesn't sound corny, but I would say be true to yourself and who you are. You can't really tell people something if you're not truthful and honestly you. You
Mm,
have to be
truthful and honestly you. Yeah.
who you are. And
Be who you are.
I know somebody who's famous who kind of tries to cover up some of who they are, but that's what people want to hear. And in fact, when they hear people's true and authentic stories, it makes them see how they can overcome things, how they too can emerge great. And that's, what I think. Be authentically you and truthful in
Beautiful.
who you are.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Okay. Beautiful ending. Love it. Love it. All right. Well, you've been so much fun to interview. Thank you for your generosity and all that you gave the
Thank you.
audience today.
Thanks for
You're
having me.
definitely a master in the industry, and I appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
And for our beautiful Speak Pact audience, ciao, ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the Speak Pact podcast. To become a recommended speaker of Antoniette's WPC speaker agency, or you are a host or planner looking for a dynamic expert in optimized performance, Antoniette would like to personally meet with you. Secure a time with her at speakerbooker.com. Again, that is speakerbooker.com. It all begins with a vision, a voice, and a pact to impact. Join the Speak Pact movement by joining our new private Facebook group at the link in our show notes. Find us on nearly every social media platform at One Antoniette. That's number 1, ANTONIETTE, or simply hashtag SpeakPact.